Yeah, we back. Yeah, we back. Now today's gonna be a quick video. We're gonna be talking about the good brother David Hundeyin, my brother in arms when it comes to this independent media, independent journalism. And then we're gonna be talking about Tariq, right? So my brother David Hundeyin, he made a video, indirectly but directly calling out Tariq. So I definitely gotta put my support behind my brother. But anyways, in this clip, the good brother David was essentially talking about divide and conquer. And of course, on my channel, I've discussed historically how divide and conquer has been used to subjugate and subvert and usurp our authority. But in this video, the good brother David actually goes deeper on the topic, and I want to, give my thoughts on the situation as well. So anyways, let me jump into the clip. I'll be right back.
What you're actually witnessing is a US secret intelligence operation. As always, you don't have to take my word for it, because the US government itself has done an excellent job of documenting exactly what is happening and why. What you're looking at is a document called Memorandum 46, a confidential memo presented by former US National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski under President Jimmy Carter on March 17, 1978. Yes, Jimmy Carter, nice guy, Nobel Peace Prize winner, him. So the context behind this document was that at the time, America's racist, hostile, imperial foreign policy towards South Africa, which offered full support to the apartheid regime, had gained attention in America and had become a big political issue among African Americans. Just a decade before that, the US had also suffered great international embarrassment at the UN because of this very issue. The US government feared that political collaboration between black people in Africa and black people in the US would lead to the re-emergence of Pan-African ideals and potentially collective action by the African voting bloc, which made up 1/3 of the UN. US imperial policy toward Africa, according to this document, could not be allowed to change under any circumstances, because the status quo of black Africa is, I quote, important for US political, economic, and military interests. His words, not mine. As a result, Brzezinski's memo stated that, quote, appropriate steps need to be taken inside and outside the country in order to inhibit any pressure by radical African leaders and organizations on the US black community, for the latter to exert influence on the policy of the administration toward Africa. So what were these appropriate steps? I'll just read them out without adding or subtracting anything. This is the highest level of the US government in its own words. Specific steps should be taken with the help of appropriate government agencies to inhibit coordinated activity of the black movement in the United States. Special clandestine operations should be launched by the CIA to cause division among black African radical national groups and their leaders, to encourage division in black circles. To preserve the present climate which inhibits the emergence from within the black leadership of a person capable of exerting nationwide appeal. I take special note of the next two. To work out and realize preventive operations in order to impede durable ties between US black organizations and radical groups in African states. To support actions designed to sharpen social stratification in the black community, which would lead to the widening and perpetuation of the gap between successful educated blacks and the poor, giving rise to growing antagonism between different black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole. Now, does any of this sound strangely familiar to you? Has American foreign policy in Africa recently become a political issue among African Americans? Maybe an issue so big that it led to protests and the unprecedented spectacle of a US AFRICOM commander bumbling and stumbling over himself on Kenyan TV. Has the US government recently suffered great international embarrassment over racial discrimination in the US and its support for foreign apartheid regimes? Has the Palestinian issue increasingly become a front-burner topic both in Africa and in the African American community? Is an African country leading the genocide case against Israel at the ICJ? Are African countries asserting their sovereign right to not support Israel? Are African American activists leading aid expeditions to Gaza, creating negative publicity for Rambusan's Middle Eastern love child? Is there increasing political awareness on both sides of the Atlantic that Africans struggling with artificial deindustrialization and non-representative leaders who don't answer to them, and African Americans struggling with systemic poverty, discrimination, and exclusion from the American economy share the same ultimate imperial enemy? And if, as it was in 1978, the answer to all these questions is yes, then what preventive measures and actions could the CIA be taking to impede durable ties between US black organizations and radical groups in African states, and to sharpen social stratification in the black community, giving rise to growing antagonism between different black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole? Sometimes we have more answers than questions.
But anyways, I want to jump into this next clip of the good brother Benjamin Dixon, who actually confirms every single thing that my brother David just said. Confirmed it. Ain't no way around it. Now, I'm sure some of y'all probably seen this clip before, but for those of y'all that haven't, I'm going to run it back because, listen, it confirmed everything my good brother David just said. Run the clip. I'll be right back.
Here's Tariq Nasheed out of his own mouth, saying how he got offered a huge bag from white supremacists to disparage Africans and immigrants. Listen to them.
They would love for me to join with them to dump on some black immigrants. There's a huge bag for that. Let me tell y'all something. I've gotten calls from these white networks wanting to put me on and give me a real big bag to get on TV and get out here and start throwing black immigrants under the bus with them.
Listen, I'm not going to say he took the offer from white supremacists, but I am going to say this. Why white supremacists feel comfortable enough calling you and offering you a big bag to betray black folks? White supremacists know good and well they could never call me. They could never offer me nothing. They can never say, Dixon, I got a huge bag for you to do what? To do what? Slap you upside the head? Okay, I'll do that for free.
Yeah, we back. Now, I want to jump into another clip, this time from Phil Scott from the African Diaspora News Channel, which I told him, change the name of that garbage channel, right? The inarticulate grifter with the Mexican wife, right? The so-called Pan-Africanist, right? Fake Pan-Africanist, like I said. About 8 years ago on his channel, and the video is still up actually, he actually spoke on this exact same document that David was just speaking on. Now, back during this time, he was still on his Pan-African hustle. He was still masquerading as a fraudulent Pan-Africanist, right? So back during this time, he was like, oh man, look at the adversary trying to divide us. But now, of course, fast forward to today, he has now followed the trends of the algorithm, and he has now also jumped on the same bandwagon as Tariq. But anyways, run the clip. Now, keep in mind, this was about 8 years ago, right? When he was a fake Pan-Africanist. Let's go.
To generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of the two forces and to cause division among black African radical national groups and their leaders. Now, before I continue, they said generate mistrust and hostility in American and world opinion against joint activity of the two forces. To work out and realize preventive operations in order to impede durable ties between U.S. black organizations and radical groups in African states. To support actions designed to sharpen social stratification of the black community, which will lead to the widening and perpetuation of the gap between successful educated blacks and the poor, giving rise to growing antagonism between different black groups and a weakening of the movement as a whole. Didn't I just talk about that? Do you see now how dangerous not being unified is? It's been planned for you not to be unified. It's encouraged. On social media, it's encouraged. That's why I'm not going to waste my time on my platform going back and forth with black folk.
All right, we back. Now, keep in mind, this document, this is an old document. This was floating around, for decades. And keep in mind, this was back when Zbigniew Brzezinski was the national security advisor back in the 70s. And he's dead now. So as you can see, that was a long time ago. And I believe that it first came to light. I think it was Farrakhan that actually was the first person, in the black community to actually speak on this document. I think he actually published it in the Final Call newspaper, the publication of the Nation of Islam. And you already know back in those days, Farrakhan was actually making connections with leaders on the continent, and his efforts were actually sabotaged by the United States government. This article from the LA Times came out back in 1996. Farrakhan has been denied a $1 billion loan from Libya. The federal government has denied the Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan permission to accept a $1 billion gift from Libya, right? So Gaddafi was going to send, Farrakhan $1 billion, like, hold that, partner. And the white man came through, said, listen, we cannot let that happen. The white man was like, listen, ain't no way we letting that happen. Take a look up on the screen from the New York Times back in 1996. U.S. officials will block Gaddafi's gift to Farrakhan. Let's jump into the article. The Clinton administration said today that they would almost certainly reject an application from the Nation of Islam and its leader, Louis Farrakhan, to be allowed to accept a donation of more than $1 billion from Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. So as you can see, Farrakhan was actually the first one to actually expose this document. And it's ironic because he was actually a victim of that same sabotage, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm not the biggest fan of Gaddafi, I'm not the biggest fan of Gaddafi, shout out to my brothers in Chad who smacked Gaddafi on the battlefield back in the day, but listen, at the end of the day, that right there is the shining example of when you have somebody from the continent with state power and resources to actually extend a $1 billion gift, to the diaspora. And you literally had U.S. officials come in and say, nah, We're not letting that happen. We're not letting the transaction take place. You're not allowed to accept this money. Now, the reason the United States gave was they said Gaddafi was a state sponsor of terrorism, right? But obviously, Gaddafi was not trying to fund terrorism. That money probably would have went to business ventures for the Nation of Islam, schools, you know, that money would have went towards economic empowerment for the black community. And keep in mind, he didn't have to pay it back. Farrakhan, that wasn't something he had to pay back with interest. Gaddafi said, listen, take this money, hold that, bro, you know? And Bill Clinton said, hell nah. And keep in mind, the Nation of Islam, especially at that time, was functioning as a nation within a nation. So that would have went to, you know, self-defense, you know, arming themselves, things like that. So that would have went towards economic empowerment and also self-defense. And obviously, Bill Clinton and his, you know, his allies did not want that to happen. You know, a self-sustaining, self-contained unit that can defend itself and feed itself and, you know, provide goods and services to its own community. That's obviously against U.S. national security interests. So yes, they blocked that $1 billion gift from Gaddafi. And that falls right in line with what was stated in the document, right? This is the most important part to me. It says to preserve the present climate, which inhibits the reemergence from within the black leadership of a person capable of exerting nationwide appeal, and to work out and realize preventative operations in order to impede durable ties between U.S. black organizations and radical groups in African states. So what are they saying here? They say in terms of national security, the United States must do what it can to prevent the rise of a charismatic, competent, unifying figure in the black community that has the power or the influence to rally the entire population across the nation, right? And also to impede durable ties between the diaspora and radical groups in African states, right? And when they say radical groups in African states, they're talking about the anti-colonial groups, the anti-imperialist groups, right? So that's why last week when you saw Tariq Nasheed put out that video saying that, oh, Ibrahim Traore, he's a Russian agent, he's selling out to Russia, things like that, basically repeating the lines from the State Department. As you can see, he's obviously in service, whether directly, voluntarily, or indirectly, involuntarily, he is in service of the State Department because he's trying to undermine that connection with the family on the continent and those of us in the diaspora, and also trying to undermine the credibility of our brothers, our radical African brothers on the continent as well, by insinuating that they are agents of the Russians. So I'm not going to confirm or deny whether he is on the payroll of the Central Intelligence Agency, but I'll say this, they're definitely not upset with the things that he is saying because it falls right in line with their interests, right? But anyways, I want to jump into another clip, this time by the good brother, the Honorable Obinfo Obadale Kambone, my brother, my teacher, my professor. Let's get into it.
This is the reason why, Nana Jacob Carruthers, Imahu Jedi Shamsu Jehuti, a lot of his work was focused on classical Kemet and Haiti, because in both of those places, that's where you found black people came together on the basis of being black, and we fought collectively against our non-black enemies. You understand? So in Haiti, you have people who are being shipped to Haiti. Some were calling themselves Fon, and the Fon, of course, were fighting against the Yoruba, and the Yoruba were fighting amongst each other. Ekiti doesn't like Oyo doesn't like Ondo. What happens, and what can happen, let me put it like this, is that when you run back to a fragment, you get yourself back into the exact same position that led to us being overrun in the first place. So what I would like for us to do is focus less on the fragments that we were taken from and focus on the times that we had victories, like in Haiti, because again, in Haiti, all those fragments were there. But when you read Nana Jean-Jacques Dessalines' Constitution, he says that all of us are les noirs, les nègres, we're all the blacks. You understand? And that's the basis on which we were able to defeat the French, we were able to defeat the British, and we were able to defeat the Spanish, is because imagine if it was like, well, only the Fon, this is a Fon corner, so only the Fon-based speakers are going to fight against the British. It's going to get us the exact same, condition.
All right, we back now. Listen, it's your boy Nefakari Dessalines back in the building. Yes, indeed. 21 Cannon's first single off the new project. Pinned comment at the top, link in the description. Sign up for the Patreon, NTD 1814, and I'm gone. Peace. King of the North, and I feel like Moise. Took a few losses, I'm back on my feet. Selling they soul for trinkets and cash. Right on the front like the leader from Chad. Feel like a see me, I feel like I'm Idris. Walking on gold, I handle my business. Honor, integrity, money, and power. Told me she love me, she want me in power. Told her I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Told her come over, come see me in person. Told her come over, I'm sick of the talking. Don't got no time cause that money be calling. Working all night and I'm up in the morning. Love when I call her, she love my attention. Body and soul, I'm truly protected. Back on that road and big body business. Told her I love her, I told her she mine. Get in that passenger seat, we gon' ride. Back on my mission, that money been stacking. Came from the bottom, I'm steady expanding. Run to the check and I pull up and vanish. Grabbing the neck from the back when I smash. Don't need no question, they know it's official. Cut from the cloth in my life, ain't no fiction. Ride for the scene like I'm Army enlist. Gotta stay focused, I'm moving deliberate. Heart of a king and my heart full of pain. Look at my neck and it's flooded with chains. And I got Desaline blood in my veins. Enemy watching, I stay with a flame. Keep it 100, they know how we move. Black on black beam, interior blue. How you gon' leave me? I told you I love you. Pain in my heart, you knew I was trouble. Enemy watching, they wanna invade it. Hoping my brothers don't never betray us. Been on my mind and I hope I can save us. Look at my flaws, I don't see perfection. But I'm authentic, I'm whipping the 7. Like it's a phantom, I'm still manifesting. Gotta get money, I gotta get paid. Stay on my toes when I'm ducking these snakes. Go to my wrist and the queen on my arm. Feeling my energy, loving my charm. Might go put Desaline face on a piece. Ready for war, that's how you get peace. Know I'm protected, I'm ready for action. When I walk in, I need 21 cannons. Secret location, I'm up in the palace. One of a kind and she loving my manners. One of a kind and I'm telling the truth. His and her Bentleys, I gotta get two. Feeling like Future, we never gon' lose. Feeling like Garvey, I'm running the block. Entering off firm and I'm letting off shots. King of the North and I'm up at the top. How you gon' leave me? I told you I love you. Pain in my heart and you knew I was trouble. Enemy watching, they wanna invade it. Hoping my brothers don't never betray us. Been on my mind and I hope I can save us. Look at my flaws, I don't